Germany, 1933. The Nazi Party, led by Adolf Hitler, seizes control of the democratic Weimar Republic. The country is transformed overnight into a police state. Basic rights and freedoms are revoked. The first concentration camps are established, imprisoning political opponents, homosexuals, and Jehovah's Witnesses. Hitler creates a propaganda campaign based on the purity and superiority of the Aryan race. His racist ideology infiltrated every level of society. Jews are labeled as impure and are excluded from mainstream German society. They are randomly attacked in the streets. The Nazi Party calls for a boycott of Jewish stores and businesses.
It was the beginning of a real change in our lives. You would find signs in stores, Jews not wanted here. The way to Jerusalem does not lead through this store.
The Nazis appointed someone to oversee my father's business. In German they call it an Abwickler. That man sat in my father's office. I see him to this very day. The monies that were due him were actually stolen on behalf of the German government, the Nazi Party. And slowly but surely my father's business was choked more and more until more or less towards the end there was very little left of it.
On September 15, 1935, the German parliament passed the Nuremberg race laws. The Nuremberg laws makes racism, and in particular anti-Semitism, legal in Germany. German Jews are stripped of their citizenship. Relations between Jews and non-Jews are forbidden. Jews cannot employ non-Jews.
Before the Nazis came to power, there was really no Jewish problem. If you're looking at the Jewish world in 1933, and you're looking at Britain, you look at France, you look at Germany, and you ask what would be the best place to live as a Jew, you would say Germany.
We understand in the 30s, this split between the Jews and the German society hadn't begun in terms of a psyche of us and them.
We were Germans first. We were Germans by nationality. We were Jews by religion.
Following World War I, a democratic regime was instituted in Germany, the Weimar Republic, which had perhaps the most liberal democratic constitution in the world.
Germany had given Jews political rights as citizens, and the Jews had jumped into that with both feet. They became very active politically. They joined political parties. Jews became disproportionately influential in the professions. They had more doctors, they had more lawyers, they had more judges, they had more journalists, they had more university professors than their 1% of the population would have suggested.
But the Weimar Republic and the constitution that created it were extremely unpopular in Germany. In the elections that brought the Nazis to power, these were the elections of November 1932, 58% of the German electorate, people of their own free will, voted against democracy in the last more or less free election in Germany.
Immediately after Hitler came to power in January 1933, the Enabling Act was passed, which gave the right to Hitler's cabinet to enact laws without the consent of Parliament. This gave Hitler dictatorial powers over the entire country.
By the time that the laws were passed, Germany was no longer even remotely resembling a democratic society.
What happened in 1935 was that there were many so-called spontaneous violent acts against Jews.
Hitler allowed the brown shirts, which was his thuggery, his militia, to go out into the streets and cause street violence. They would beat up Jews, they would rob Jews, they would stand in front of shops owned by Jews, they would break those windows, they would rape young Jewish girls.
The Hitler Youth, in troops of 20 kids, something like that, 30, would parade through the streets of Berlin. All traffic would have to stop. Whenever you saw the Nazi flag, people would have to stand at attention and salute and say Heil Hitler.
I remember Hitler's birthday, April 30th, 1933. We lived in an apartment, and I opened a window when I heard music. And there came a band of stormtroopers marching down the street, and they were singing a song in German. It said, "Wenn das Judenblut am Messer spritzt," which means when Jewish blood spurts from the knives. And I said, Dad, come here, you have to listen to this. Listen to what they have to sing, what they're singing. And my dad nonchalantly walked over to the window, he listened to it, and he said, "Don't worry about it, they will come and go just like all the rest of them."
The country was drifting into anarchy.
Nazis realized that in order to create a new reality for the Jews in Germany, it would have to be through legislation.
The Nuremberg Laws were drafted in a matter of hours, and they were presented the next day at the 1935 annual Nazi rally in Nuremberg.
In a sense, these laws came as a calming moment of that violence against the Jews and pressure on the Jews, and ostensibly came to organize society so that Jews and everyone else in Germany knows who everybody is and where they belong. There are the Aryans, all those people in Germany who are citizens of Germany, and there are the Jews who are not citizens but have a right to live in Germany under certain circumscribed circumstances.
Actually fusing something that's rational, legislation, with something irrational, which is xenophobia.
These laws set out to deny Jews in Germany their citizenship, regardless of how long a particular Jew had been living in Germany or that person's family. And the laws ultimately defined citizenship in Germany based upon who a person's grandparents were by race. And therefore, anyone who had even one Jewish grandparent could no longer be a citizen of Germany.
Sexual relations between Jews and Aryans was considered a crime because sexual relations between Jews and Aryans obviously violated racial principles and would produce children who would be in some way carriers of the Jewish gene.
The Nuremberg laws separate the Jews out of German society, and with that, a sense of indifference is engendered, which ultimately would lead to, a sense of indifference to the Jewish fate at later stages of Nazi policy.
I had 3 very, very close friends in my class. 2 of them were not Jewish and 1 of them was Jewish. The classrooms all over Germany were rearranged. The 8 of us Jewish kids sat in the back row. Our best friends were no longer allowed to talk to us. The teachers were no longer permitted to ask us questions. They weren't even permitted to reprimand us. There was to be no communication between Aryan and Jew.
We children felt it more acutely because of the harassment that we received almost on a daily basis in school and on the street. Somebody came up from behind you and called you a dirty Jew and gave you a shove or push. And the parents thought initially that this would blow over until more and more laws were introduced. We couldn't buy in certain stores anymore, we couldn't go to a swimming pool anymore, we couldn't go into parks anymore.
The idea that Jews are not equal to the rest of the German people, the idea that Jews should not be equal citizens, the idea that there should be a social separation legislated in Germany seemed to be at least unobjectionable to almost everybody else in Germany, and no one spoke out.
The very famous case is of a lawyer who, one of his clients was a Jewish owner of a department store. And this lawyer goes to the police office where his client is held, and he protests. And immediately is beaten up by SS men, and then he's paraded through the streets. He's carrying a big sign that says, "I'm a lawyer and I will never complain to the police again." No other lawyer went then to the police to basically argue on his behalf, and he didn't do it after that anymore.
The Nuremberg crimes were really the crimes of the Nuremberg elites, judges and lawyers and faith leaders and educators. The society that should have been engaged in protesting against Nuremberg racism were the elites and the society that in effect were promulgating this hate and promulgating these laws.
When the Nuremberg laws were passed in 1935, they were not passed, as far as almost all historians now agree, with any intention or any vision of the future that there would be a murder of all the Jews, an attempt at what the Nazis later called the final solution to the Jewish question. However, these laws ultimately served as the foundation for determining all policies against Jews, and that included, as time went on, also killing the Jews.
The rise of Nazi Germany and the Nuremberg laws are a stark reminder of how marginalization and the denial of basic human rights led to Auschwitz and the murder of millions of innocent people. It is a reminder we fail to heed at our own peril.